So Dublin 22 points, Westmeath 11 points in the Leinster Senior Football Championship quarter-final. Dublin, in the end, a comprehensive victory for Dublin. I don't think anyone was too surprised by this victory. Very comfortable in the end for Dublin. An 11-point victory, 10 different scorers on the day for Dublin. Kieran Kilkenny, outstanding. Personally, my man of the match alongside Johnny Cooper. But I think there's a whole host of Dublin players that were outstanding today. And a game that I think everyone really expected Dublin to win quite comfortably. What's going on, everyone? It's Aaron here from GA Fan TV. Dublin have just beaten Westmeath by 11 points, and of course, I'm back again with my match reaction, as always. A routine victory for Dublin in the end, very routine indeed. 10 different scores on the day for Dublin. Really never had any problems. It never looked in doubt. And, there really isn't too much to say, really, to be honest. But, look, listen, we might as well make a video on it, and I might as well, give my thoughts on that game that played today. So look, listen, we'll look at the teams first of all here. So this was the Dublin side. Stephen Cluxton in goal. You have Michael Fitzsimons, Tom Lahiff and Owen Merchant, of course, making up the full back line. The half back line was Robbie McDade, Johnny Cooper and John Small. Of course, in midfield you had James McCarthy, Brian Fenton. In the half forward line you had Niall Scully, Kieran Kilkenny and Sean Bugler. And of course, in the full forward line, you had Dean Rock, Con O'Callaghan, and Paddy Small. Interesting to see Tom Lahiff in there, his championship debut, and he is a midfielder by trade, so very interesting to see him in there at centre back. But I thought he done very well, and he did drift into the midfield at times as well. And perhaps the fact that, Desi Farrell knew that realistically Dublin were probably always going to win this game. It was a good chance for Tom Lahiff to get a good run out with the likes of Fenton and McCarthy in front of him. We'll look at the Westmeath side here. So Jason Daly in goal, Bodu Saya, Kevin Maguire, Jack Smith. And then, of course, you have Jamie Ganood, Ronan Wallace and James Dolan. In midfield, you had Ray Connellan and Sam Duncan. In the half-forward line, you had Killian Daly, Ronan O'Toole and David Lynch. And, of course, in the full forward line, Kieran Martin, John Heslin and Luke Loughlin. And having a look at some of the scorers, so Dean Rock hit 7 in total in the game. Kieran Kilkenny with 5. You had the likes of Sean Bugler, Paddy Small, Owen Merchant, Niall Scully, Johnny Cooper, all contributing. Con O'Callaghan, Robbie McDade as well. I mean, there's 10 different scores. We could go on and on here. Westmeath, 11 points in the end. John Heslin, of course, with 3. Luke Loughlin, Kieran Martin, Ray Connellan, all contributing with 2. And Ronan O'Toole did kick a cracking point as well in this game for Westmeath. And look, listen, it was always going to be very difficult for Westmeath. And, I'm going to be honest, I did put out a tweet before the start of the game, and I did expect the game to be a little bit closer, maybe going into the final 15 to 20 minutes. And when I say a little bit closer, I mean 5 or 6 points. I didn't think it would be a 10-point game at that point. And the reason why I thought that was I thought Westmeath would be very defensive in this game. And they were quite defensive, don't get me wrong, but they weren't as defensive as what teams normally are like when they come up against Dublin, especially that early on in the championship. You think of Carlow, teams like that who come up against Dublin, normally very defensive. And Westmeath are quite a defensive side. And they had an interesting strategy. They pressed up on Dublin's kickouts. They did sit back quite a bit, but they did try and play football at the same time. And you do have to admire Westmeath for that. They did try and be competitive as they could be with Dublin. And I think the fact they registered 11 points in the game, I think tells a lot. And they didn't even hit too many wides in the game as well. So, a lot of credit does have to go for Westmeath in the game. But realistically speaking, this game was wrapped up after about 15 minutes. Dean Rock with the first score of the game. And Dublin were able to rally a lot of early scores. Once they built up a 4-0 lead with the likes of Kieran Kilkenny, Sean Bugler hitting points, Niall Scully contributing, it was going to be very tough for Westmeath to overturn that. Westmeath were struggling with their kickouts. James McCarthy, brilliant in midfield. Johnny Cooper winning a lot of ball as well. And Dublin were fantastic in that sense, with Westmeath's kickouts. And Dublin just kept retaining possession. They kept turning the ball over. I think Jim McGuinness pointed out at half-time that Dublin had 22 tackles to 8 in the first half, which shows how well Dublin were doing at turning the ball over. And, you can just tell when you watch these two teams, you can tell the difference between both of them. You can tell one team's Division 2 and Dublin are, I mean, that's not even a fair comparison, really, is it? Dublin are 5 in a row All-Ireland winners, and Westmeath, unfortunately for them, they're nowhere, they're not even in the top 3 in Leinster. So, Yeah, look, listen, they stood off Owen Merchant for one of his points, kind of going into the closing stages of the first half, which I found quite interesting. And, Dublin were 5 up at the first water break, and it was always going to be very tough for Westmeath from there to really try and turn it around. Ronan O'Toole kicked a cracking point on the 18th minute for Westmeath, and they did keep chipping away. At times it looked like maybe Dublin are going to really break away here and maybe win this game by like 15 to 20 points. And to be fair to Westmeath, they were able to just keep the scoreboard ticking over, keep it somewhat respectable. And it was routine from Dublin. And, I think one thing we're going to see from Dublin in the Championship this year in particular, especially in Leinster, is they're not going to go full tilt. They're not going to go 100% in Leinster, maybe like they would have in previous years, because of the fact that, Dublin play again next week, whereas in previous Leinster Championships, you'd have a 3-week break, sometimes 2, in between Leinster games. And obviously it's in summer as well, so it's in much better conditions. We've seen Owen Merchant limp off on the 65th minute with an injury. Kieran Kilkenny went off to get treatment at one point as well. So injuries are going to happen. And I think for Dublin, you could tell in this game that I think there was another gear they could have went up to. They could have given a little bit more. But at the same time, you don't blame them, because it's a marathon, not a sprint at the end of the day. And fantastic in the end from Dublin, very impressive. If anyone thought that maybe Dublin were going to slow down in Leinster anyway, I don't think anyone did, in all honesty. I know some people think that Dublin might lose in the All-Ireland semi-finals or might slip up against Donegal or Kerry. And personally, I still think Kerry will beat Dublin. But I think, it's going to be tough. It's going to be close. It is going to be close. No team's going to beat Dublin by like 5 or 6 points. There's only going to be 1 or 2 points in it, if even. So very interesting nonetheless. Owen Merchant's injury could be, big. Hopefully there's nothing really there. Kieran Kilkenny was my man of the match, as I said before. Kicked 5 points, and it wasn't just his points taken that was brilliant in the game. His possession retention was fantastic. Offloading the ball into the full forward line at times as well, dropping into the midfield when he needed to. Dublin needed to be patient in possession a lot of the time, because obviously Westmeath did sit back quite a lot, and for those exact reasons, I think Kieran Kilkenny was fantastic. But yeah, look, listen, there's not really much else left to say really, other than a fantastic 11-point victory for Dublin. Longford or Laois in the semis, hard one to call. That could easily go to extra time in penalties tomorrow. I think it will be Laois, but I wouldn't rule out Longford either. But either way, Dublin are winning the Leinster Championship this year. Let's not kid ourselves here. But yeah, I am going to go ahead and wrap this up here. Do leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. My name is Aaron, and I'll catch you in the next one.